honored to have actor and activist, Mr. Danny Glover.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
We're going to get right down to it. I would like to know what inspired you to become an activist?
Well, and I'm glad you use the word activist, and what inspired me to become an activist is separate from what inspired me to become an actor. Um, I'm a child of the civil rights movement. The images that I remember from the civil rights movement, the stories I remember from the civil rights movement, the people who I first were anointed for me, were men and women of the civil rights movement. And so as a result, I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like the men and women who were members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. I wanted to be like the men and women who marched in Selma and other places. I wanted to be like those people. Those were my heroes. Those were my first heroes. Mm-hmm. So as a young man growing up, I happened to grow up at a time that kind of flowed into the civil rights movement, and that was the Black Power movement. I was a student at San Francisco State College in the late 60s, and there was an enormous dialogue that was going on among around the issues around the community, our relationship to the community. There's enormous dialogue going on around the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. There was a dialogue going around what the university should represent, who it should represent, whose interests should represent. We were students who were at a working class college, and we wanted to have something to say. And so that formed the basis of my own activism. And then the other part of it, as I continue in life, I'm a grandfather, a father, and I'm a citizen. So the work that we do as citizens makes us activists.
I'd like to know, as in a society where it seems as though young people are so involved in sports and entertainment, what about those young people that would like to be involved? How would they go about getting involved with the different political agencies that they have?
Well, one of the things is that sometimes I think young people are misrepresented in a lot of ways in terms of their ambition. Granted that popular culture, the culture that often influences them and often is created by them for the most part, and often it's created and then subverted. The creation is subverted into something else or changed into something else. But I think it's often the young people are engaged in a way, in ways that we don't imagine. We think of them in terms of hip hop, and we think of hip hop as something that is the antithesis of activism. And yet it is activism. It started out as activism. It started out as young people's voice. If you go anywhere in the world, you hear hip hop right today. I don't care if you go to Japan. I don't care if you go to Timbuktu, where I was, where some young artists were singing hip hop to me. Young kids were singing hip hop to me, rhythms in Arabic, Or if you go to Brazil, then young people have their own statement and their own voice within this particular culture. It's not their fault that the culture that they have developed and the culture in which they have evolved in has been one almost purely of consumption. How much money can someone? And often the kings and queens of the industry don't sing about the real things. Don't sing about what really is on young people's mind, and young people's mind is not always that young honey on the street, you know what I'm saying, on the corner, whatever it is. And that's not to demonize them in any way, but I'm saying that you have spoken word artists that follow in the tradition of great poets like...
Bumping our heads against brick walls, stumbling around in the dark. So dark I'm blinded and cannot see. I can't see the mother praying, the father who's not straying, the teacher teaching, the preacher preaching. I can't see the children playing dodgeball, dodging after school drugs, alcohol and bullets, choosing college for knowledge over prison for violence. I can't see the neighbor caring, the community leader daring to step out. Somebody turned off the lights and I can't see in the dark.
You're involved in Trans Africa, and I would like to know what exactly is. Can you explain what exactly is trans for those of in our audience who don't know? What exactly is Trans Africa?
Trans Africa Forum is an organization, an institution, which began 30 years ago in the struggle to end apartheid. It is shaped into an organization, which is an outgrowth of many organizations from the past. There's the Council on African Affairs, which was begun by W.B. Du Bois and others, along with Paul Robeson in 1939. So Trans-Africa is an ongoing, is a dialogue or a manifestation of many movements which have attempted to provide a policy forum, a place where African Americans, people here in the belly of the beast, could talk about U.S. foreign policy in relationship to Africa and the diaspora. So we have all these African descendants here. And so Trans-Africa is a forum, is an institution which creates and stimulates dialogue about policy. What we got to do is those who have come before and who've had their moment, as Paul Robeson once said. Paul Robeson once said that each generation has its own voice and has to take its own stand to represent itself. We have to create the environment for them to do that. There are young people who are talking about the issues around violence and youth culture and violence in our community. There's young people who are involved in groups like Barrios Unidos, Latino brothers who are working to stop the violence in their community. There's young people involved in Unity One, African Americans in South Central who are talking about maintaining the peace in their community. We don't hear those things. That's not the energy, and that's not in the public dialogue. I was in Brazil a couple of years ago, and the president of Brazil was presenting an award to the best message, artistic message from young people against, in the fight against AIDS. All four or five of the contestants, the finalists, they did whatever they did. Their artistic rendering was in hip hop.